as frequently happens in the English-speaking Caribbean, we have a long history of labor leaders who become kind of petty tyrants, right? They get the mass support and they begin very quickly to abuse it. They start having the big bank accounts, relationships left, right, and center, you know, kind of shaking down a lot of businesses and so forth and people for money. It was this whole thing. I should say, on a comical note, Gary's claim to fame was that he was big into unidentified flying objects. And this is no lie, right? So his one time in the public eye, he's speaking before the General Assembly at the UN. And in his inimitable way, he says that we should have investigations into UFO, unidentified flying objects, right? Which he didn't spell out, but he just used the acronym UFO, right? Grenadians, as you can well imagine, were so incredibly embarrassed to see that this was their leader. There. But it just gives you some sense of just, you know, how kind of out to lunch this man was, right? So then in 1974, the same year that actually Grenada achieves independence, you have the birth of this new Jew movement, the head of which is Morris Bishop, Bernard Ford. And it's really this multi-class sort of coalition in opposition to the Gary government. Eventually, 5 years later, and it was a fairly simple process. I think it was probably about 50 people with some arms who took over the radio station and said effectively that we're in charge. I mean, I don't think there was any gunfire or anything in this revolution whatsoever. And the next thing you have Morris Bishop and Ford who were in power. And very quickly, and I think that this was one of the issues, and this is one of the reasons why I'm somewhat pessimistic about where the left can go in the English-speaking Caribbean, particularly after the failure of the revolution. Very quickly, Cord and Bishop sort of, Cord especially, kind of invoked this Marxist-Leninist tradition of how it is that they were going to lead the revolution, right? So it was highly top-down, highly vanguardist. I think of things that actually had been left up to Morris Bishop without Cord, although Cord was very much considered sort of the brains of the operation, and Bishop was kind of more considered the popular face of the revolution, the person who could go meet and greet and persuade people. Cord was the kind of the behind-the-scenes tactician. I think if things had actually been left to Morris Bishop, the revolution would have been far more flexible. I think it would have been less top-down. Some people would contest this. And I also think, and this is another big issue of the revolution, the degree to which this vanguardist kind of really Leninist approach, and the fact that, or in conjunction with that, this idea that you can really import wholesale models of revolutionary leadership from elsewhere and impose that or imply that, you know, almost categorically the way that Ford wanted to in Grenada. I don't think that you would have found any. I mean, at those dinners that I had with the family, right? Nobody who was even anti-revolution for where it went, nobody there, right, would question the fact that we needed a revolution in Grenada. Right? They would just question simply of what kind, right, and how it should have been handled. And I think for a lot of people, what kind of grated their nerves was this very top-down, vanguardist way of almost imposing the revolution and kind of telling people what it is that they should be doing. When in fact, the way that the revolution came to pass, it wasn't some big bloody coup, and it certainly wasn't one that was not that we could say that was entirely working class led or entirely peasant led. I mean, this is a multi-class coalition, right? So that when it is that there was this real invocation of this kind of Marxist-Leninist language and way of approaching the revolutionary struggle, it really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, right? And particularly when it is that so many people were so pleased about what it is that the revolution had achieved. What it had done in the way of basic needs for many people was something that nobody was going to contest. On the level of education, at the level of providing basic infrastructure, particularly in the rural areas, for what it did for healthcare, nobody was going to contest those things. But it was the way of doing politics that was very, very troublesome for a lot of people. Ultimately, what happens in the course of 1983? You have a serious faction or factions that grow up or spring up in the Central Committee. One faction on the side of Ford, another faction on the side of Bishop. Right? So it's really the kind of the more flexible approach, kind of trying to be a little bit more popular and populist, if you will, versus the other side that really wants to be far more hardcore. One of the things that Ford did very quickly is that he kind of enlisted the support, not kind of, he did, he enlisted the support of the military, right? So all of a sudden, and of course this was not the first time. I mean, another very serious criticism of the revolution, and I think it reflected kind of this very top-down approach, is the fact that a lot of people were jailed for being in the opposition. There was political repression. There was not kind of freedom of expression, particularly to criticize the regime. So there were these sorts of problems. So that it wasn't unknown in the struggle that people had resorted to the threat of violence or the use of violence before. But this very quickly became an armed struggle within kind of the Central Committee. Ultimately, it led to a coup of the coup, if you will. Bishop had gone away to Eastern Europe. He came back. And the next thing you know, he was actually arrested when he went home. That was the 12th, I think, I'm pretty sure the 12th of October of 1983. In a week's time, he's been killed by forces loyal to Ford. And then 6 days later, of course, you have the invasion, right, which effectively put an end to the revolution. One of the things that I would say is, and this is why I'm somewhat pessimistic about the possibility of radical politics in the Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean, in the wake of the revolution, of the Grenadian Revolution, is that I think for too many people right now, if we mean by radical socialist politics are far too associated with vanguardism and a top-down approach. And that when there are squabbles, people can possibly pull out guns, right? I mean, I think that there's this real fear that is, even without kind of the U.S. intervention, I think that this is what a lot of people fear is meant by a certain type of socialist revolution or socialist movement. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, right? But I think that this is actually a real fear. Now, let me shift to kind of some of the things that I think could actually create some sort of radicalization. Have I been talking for a really long time? I have a few more minutes? I'm sorry. All right. A couple of things. One of the things that's happened in the last few years, after the revolution, is that we have seen the influx of American capital and European capital in a way that is just crazy, right? The beaches, the hotels on the beaches have just expanded. I mean, areas where you could just kind of freely walk on the beach now are part of these big hotels. The university, that was the medical school, right, that is now St. George's University. It's uncanny. I wish I had some pictures. It's uncanny the degree to which the architecture at that school looks like the new buildings here, right? It must be the same freaking architect. I'm dead serious. I mean, it is uncanny. But as a result of the expansion of the university, right? And of course, a lot of people, as a result of the university, coming to know Grenada, apart from how it is, it's actually being advertised in, I don't know if some people caught a few weeks ago, the New York Times had done in the travel section, this, one of these things like come to Grenada, that kind of thing, kind of a piece. And there was absolutely no mention of the revolution, or when it is that they mentioned it, it was kind of to say, it was all in the past, and all the social problems that were there before have all been taken care of, right? That kind of thing. So what you have is this major influx of a lot of foreign capital, a lot of people buying up a whole pile of property. On the one hand, what's been good for the local economy, construction has taken off, right? I mean, it's just amazing the amount of construction. Then you've got people like my father and his generation, people who left the country, came here or went to England.